You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan White.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. A friend of mine once told me that the secret of art is that if you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, paint it red. Today's topic is color, and our guests are equally colorful or muted or monochromatic when called upon depending on the mood or the assignment. We first met our first guest, Adam Marelli, at Optic 2018. I've heard some interesting life stories in my time, but Adam's journey and a list of accomplishments left me speechless. His curiosity and methodology, the way he breaks down the elements of a photograph and references each part through the eyes of an artist, a draftsman, and a practitioner of Eastern philosophies is well beyond my personal abilities. Adam is also a Leica ambassador. Also joining us for the second half of our show via Skype is LA-based lifestyle and fashion photographer and videographer Natasha Wilson. Natasha is the founder and vision behind Anastasia Photo, and her sense of style, color, and composition is easy to pick out of the crowd. Her clients include Instagram, the Oscars, the Met Gala, the Teen Choice Awards, and the Grammys. Natasha's photographed a slew of A-list celebrities, and her photographs for Chiara Ferragini, I hope I said that right, Band of Gypsies Denim, Legato Apparel, American Threads, and Neon Cowboys have appeared in Vogue Paris, Inked Magazine, The Photographic Journal, Papercut, and Poster Child Magazine.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. I need a cup of coffee and a cigarette just after reading all that.
Read a whole website.
Anyway, let's start off with that. Adam, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much, Alan. Good
Okay.
to be back.
And I didn't give you a plug of all your clients. We'll talk about all that during the show. This is an interesting topic, color theory, because some of it's subjective and some of it is objective. And it's kind of, a lot of people, I think, aren't even aware of what color does and everything else. And there's a lot of subtleties to it. You approach color from a definitive point of view and with an understanding of the qualities of color, tone, and hue. Where does that come from? Where did you start picking apart color? Most people just see color. It's pretty. You're beyond that.
I started with color painting, and I think that becomes a different foundation because you're not strictly observing color, but you actually have to make it so that you see a color in life, and whether you're trying to recreate it or put something on a canvas that bears anything to what you're imagining is going to go on there, you actually have to make the color. It's a bit different than what happens in photography, where somehow the color just shows up on a negative, on a sensor. So it's a little different when you're looking at color from the standpoint of actually being able to produce it in a certain medium. And it gives you, I think, a little bit more latitude in moving across mediums. So whether I'm talking to a silk screener, graphic designer, painter, fabricator, like we just have a color language that allows us to move around the space.
That's
Do
interesting.
you even say red and blue? Do you even use these words? Or
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the kind of classic ones that get used in regular conversation, which always jump out to me, are that, so we'll say khaki, right? So khaki is I think it's a Pushtan word originally, and it comes from, it's a fabric. It's a dust-packed fabric that is a sandy color, but the word is khaki. So in our lexicon, we use it to reference a color. It's actually a fabric, and then we have we have the duplicity of it being like pants that you wear. So there's things like that. Purple and violet. Usually, artists will talk about violet, not purple. And probably
That's true. Yeah.
Because you've got blue, violet, and violet, so it makes sense to stay within that sort of portion of the word, because there's continuity as you move around a color wheel. And then the last one is brown. And a discovery that I've watched art students make is that what we know as brown, sort of leather brown, something that doesn't have a lot of red in it, is actually a very low intensity yellow. Photographers don't know where to position or control browns in pictures. And the difficulty is that in digital, it lands somewhere between a yellow or an orange. Sometimes it'll pick up on that spectrum depending on what processing you're using. But in paint, it's really like you run down the spectrum of yellow and you eventually end up at brown.
Right. And you use a lot of brown in your work, at least. I mean, you're photographing wood and craftspeople, and
it comes in. So, raw umber or burnt umber are the tubes of paint that you would be making, or the pigments that you would be starting with to make those really intense browns, which...
So you started off very young. You said about 11 years old you started painting, right?
Yeah, I mean, some kids got violins. I got paintbrushes.
no baseball bats.
So you mentioned earlier that you make your own colors. You create them. You blend them to get them the way you want them to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that option really in photography. Do you find it frustrating when you're out there taking pictures and you see a certain red or a green or a blue and it's not right and you can't go in there and mix pigment into it to change it? So how do you deal with that stuff? Do these things kind of drive you nuts?
No, it's what you do is you tune it. When you get... So I don't spend a lot of time grinding pigments and making. You can make paint in like the tradition that goes back about 1,000 years to doing paint production goes back even further if you get out of oils.
You mean you don't crush fruit berries and make your own? Oh man!
So,
let's get our next guest on here.
Crushed beetles and lapis lazuli.
Get Natasha on the line quick.
There's an advantage to that because one, you can do things that you can afford. If you have to use crushed rubies to make something that's alizarin crimson, it's blindingly expensive. You need a patron who will fund that paint. So when you get paints out of the tube, they always have to be tuned. It's just, you don't just take a color out. You don't take like Viridian green and French ultramarine blue. So to someone listening, like an emerald green, something that's like really, got that crystalline quality to it.
Yeah.
And French ultramarine, which is like it teeters towards a violet. It's not a blue sky blue. It's like a really rich blue. But when you take those out, like usually I'll tune them down with something like a Payne's gray, just to like really get the pure intensity of color is often too much for a picture, so that you're using 2 or 3 colors to get the color to where you need it to be. Photo's kind of the same. That anything red in a digital photograph, I know immediately, like that saturation slider has got to go down, or the hue is going to get shifted usually a little bit to the orange side.
Can you define hue and the other terms that we often throw
Yeah.
around? When we're talking
Okay,
about color?
so
Yeah.
but language, language unity. I'm sure like the UN has got a whole course on this. So in photo, we will talk about hue, saturation, and luminance.
Mm-hmm.
So hue is this, as it's set up on a slider, is color. It's like when you think of like a box of crayons, like the hue would be the color of the crayon. Except in photo, you can usually have the option to move it. So make it more towards the red side or more towards the orange side. And then when you get to the end of the orange, you get to the next one that goes orange to yellow, and you go through the spectrum.
Right.
Saturation is the intensity of the color. So that in painting terms, it's how much of the pigment is actually in there. So when you take something, maximum saturation would be like red pigment, or say lapis lazuli. So you get like sort of like an aqua blue. Like that would be the most intense version.
Mm-hmm.
The least intense version of saturation is gray, because as you dial that back, there's still a value. There's a black and white scale that
Right.
underpins that color, but as you take it out, you end up with a gray. Not a black, just a gray. So the most intense version of saturation in painting, it's called congiantismo, and it's where the darkest shadows of a color were just the pure color. This is a very expensive way to paint. Paint this way when someone else is paying you. You can see examples of it here in New York, like up at the Met, but that's saturation. Luminance is taking the color from the pure color up to white. So if one's going down to a gray, the other one's going up to a white. So that as you increase the luminance, you're taking the value of the color and taking a red and making it paler and paler and paler and paler until you get a very like pink, and then you get white, and then you're out of color. You're into a monochromatic realm. You're no longer in a chromatic realm.
Now you started off in the time of film, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you transitioned to digital.
Correct.
All right. Based on what you just told me, you get color. You understand when you're looking at colors, you know exactly what you're looking at. Do you prefer film or digital when it comes to color? Because with film, every batch of film is different and it ages differently and everything else. Whereas when you buy a digital camera, once you test your camera and the specific sensor in your camera, because no two are the same, you kind of have a handle of what your camera is doing. Or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, cameras have a certain way that they behave. And once you get used to how they handle color, you know how to tune them. You know how to adjust your pictures for them.
When you were shooting film, did you used to like shoot tests and go crazy? Because I know some people that shot more tests than actual pictures.
You know, the problem with film work, and it depends on what you're shooting. When I was shooting film, I was shooting a lot of architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was a little migration in color, the thing that you're usually the most concerned about is that the set of pictures for the exhibition, they look consistent. You kind of need just like the same problem in all of them,
right,
mattering more than how it's going to change, because something that artists seem to get, and I don't mean this as a sort of knock at photographers, but artists they're intimately aware of the fact that when you take a picture, you take a painting from a studio and then you hang it in the exhibition space, you hang it in a collector's home, all of a sudden that thing looks different.
Yeah.
It moves. Digital photography's got people on computers and they're suffering from this delusion that there's like this pure neutral that you can get to, and it's nonsense because you take the picture and you move it somewhere and it changes. So I was happy to get into digital photography once it got out of its clunky phase. In the beginning, the colors were too clunky. You couldn't move them around much. It was more like changing channels on a silk screen. And this
Yes.
I had no interest in. But once you can really deal with color selectively and not deal with the color casts, a lot of the romanticism of liking film is that it's got a cast on the whole thing. So it immediately looks more unified. And when something looks unified, people will say, oh, it looks like a movie still, it's cinematic.
Right.
All that is like someone just took like a drop of white and put it inside your entire picture, and now it all goes together. Now the reins are off and you can mangle digital photography because the dials are everywhere.
Yeah.
And can we talk a bit, the word theory often, as soon as someone hears the word theory, they start to run away, or many people do.
The eyes glaze over. Yes, I know.
So let's talk about, are there certain color theories, and if you can name them and discuss any of them, and then maybe we get to the subject of the way colors work together and the reasons people put certain colors together and what effects they may have.
So the concept of color theory emerged in the 1800s from a guy who was a scientist. He was a chemist. Chevroy was his name. His approach to it was he was tasked to restore some tapestries, and he was trying to figure out, like, how do you lap 3 red threads and 1 yellow thread to start to produce an orange? So he was looking at the way in which color interacted when you wove it together. Right. So it behaved. So being a good scientist, he made theories of simultaneous contrast of color, and he made a theory. That's why it's called color theory. I don't know if anyone called color theory, used that term before him. Prior to him, the limitations were, where can you get pigments? And you didn't have the whole spectrum available. So like the world of chemistry wasn't where it's at now, where you can get the cadmium colors, the really red, really orange, really yellow. These didn't exist. So you get brown school painters like Rembrandt, who they go to a palette with burnt sienna, a Venetian red, which is like a dull brick fire engine red, a white and maybe an ochre. And like, that's it. That's their whole palette. That's what they're working in. Around the time of, mid-1800s, you get advancements in chemistry, and consequently advancements in pigment. So enter the Impressionists, the Post-Impressionists, the Fauves, guys like Matisse, Flamenc, Duran. These really, color makes a huge turn because it wasn't accessible for people to be using, and everyone started messing around with like, well, what can we do with this? What does this work actually do? And interesting way, I had a student who asked me this the other day. He was looking at an Ellsworth Kelly painting, and he was like, "Man, I don't get it. It's just like it's a funny shape and it's a single color. Like, really? Like, is this worth $10 million?" And what I said was that, look, we're not going to talk about the market value. We can go to Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, and do all that. But my take on it and the way that it's evolved here in the States, and I think in a way that it informs photography a lot, is that when everyone left Europe during World War II and they ended up in the States, it kind of consolidated an artistic pool into a country that otherwise wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, like the art world could have shifted to Libya, but it didn't. Everyone ended up in the States. You had people who were kicked out before the war. And one of the things that I felt I was looking at when I was looking at American art in the early part of the 1900s was that in an effort to make something that was American, something that was distinctly not European, what they had to do is they had to break art down to its DNA. They had to break it down to the shapes. They had to break it down to the colors. They had to break it down to the components and the constituents which make up the visual language. And they each took different parts. Like Pollock took viscosity. That was it. He took like a quality of paint. He was never much of a draftsman. He studied under Thomas Hart Benton, who was also not much of a draftsman, and his work is not rendered. I mean, de Kooning could draw. He was European trained. He could draw, but he opted for abstract. Pollock picked up on this other quality of paint and isolated that. Ellsworth Kelly, a classically trained artist, he focused on the negative shapes and these cast shadows and these like selective colors of cast shadows that you would never really see. There was a great exhibition that had him going through the newspaper and cutting out small sections in pictures to just look at like what color is the shadow that an evergreen tree casts? Like, so how does it go from being a green, yellow tree to casting like a blue-violet shadow? And like you see his notes, you can see where his brain is and what he's thinking and what he's looking for. So that's where I think that focus on what we get in abstract art in America, I mean, it happened in Europe too, but primarily in the States, that a lot of people look at and they're like, man, it's like a square and a circle. What on earth am I looking at? But they're really trying to figure out, like, what does a color do? How do I get a color to go forward? Like, which colors go forward, which colors go back? This is a whole conversation.
Right.
We're talking color theory, and I think part of the equation that goes into this for a photographer who sees something and wants to capture it and then output it is that what you get on your screen is not necessarily what you saw and not necessarily what was captured. So I have a couple of questions for you. Screen maintenance as far as adjusting your colors and maintaining it, and even choice of screens that use monitors. Could you tell us a little bit about that? First, what brand monitors are you working at? Because they're not all good and they're not all accurate. I'm just curious to know which you like using.
The bit on the screen only matters as far as the how someone's going to engage your work. So if 90% of your clients come off of social media, a color calibrated screen hardly matters because they're looking at it on their phone. So you can do everything that you want, and then you have no control over how someone is viewing it.
Yeah, good point.
So if I get it right enough before it goes to my printer, and then he looks at it on his screen, and then we do test prints, and it's like, whether we look in a test print, like, is the picture going to be shown where? Is it going to be shown under, artificial light? Is it going to be like lighting that has a color temperature to it?
Sure.
Is it going to be shown in a natural light space, which I prefer because pictures actually, they wake up and they go to sleep. They have a huge, paintings have a huge dynamic range in that they behave differently. They have different moods and temperaments as the sun goes up and down.
Yeah.
And if you try and pin it to just like, I want it on the screen, to rearrange life around that, it's like Apple, like they do a great job. Some of the other color calibrated screens for, that I've worked on, with printers and things, they're nice, but it's really like, what are you doing with it? Is it to have someone stand over your shoulder and have a perfectly calibrated image for that thing? Like, I don't really want to look at a back glowing picture to begin with. It's ultimately
We have no choice, though. Unfortunately, they don't have any print screens we could look at.
Yeah,
that would be great. But
what is the final product for you? I mean, in one of your photos,
well, just what you said, a photograph. It's a photograph.
it's a print.
I mean, you can. This, like the thing on the screen, like that's not a photograph. That's a digital representation of something that was made through some optical device. But a photograph is I say, like, do me a favor, go get me the photograph. No one's going to grab your phone. They're not going to grab a book. They're going to be like, where's the thing on the wall? Like that's how at least we refer to it. So I think of everything in terms of producing a printed photograph, black and white or color.
And jumping back to the theory idea, I'm assuming over the years, over the centuries, there have been counter theories, right? Can you speak to any of the ideas that people have kind of put forth to say, this combination of colors creates this, or we're going to work with this because it will generate this emotion or this feeling, or we want our product to have this color for these reasons?
So I'd say embedded in that question is a division between the theorists and the people who are applying it. The theorists, what they're interested in observing is the behavior and how color behaves when you put it through different experiments. And the consensus on the behavior, that if you take, say, very simple, you take a neutral gray, right? And you put something warm over it. Say you put an orange on top of it. It immediately makes the gray look cool.
Right.
Same thing happens in reverse. So the behavior of colors, as color theorists were starting to look at, they started to get very interested in sort of global theory, so things that happen all the time. And then as you go down, how those interactions can happen at a more subtle level so that you get fugitive colors. So can you, as a theorist, can you get the same color to look like two different colors by changing the context? So this is the sort of theory side. So they're probably more like anthropologists or biologists studying behavior. Whereas the engineering side and the manufacturing side and then the marketing product side, when they want color to elicit something, one, you've got the cultural hurdle of color means something in different cultures.
Sure.
There is no universal understanding and acceptance of the significance of color. White could mean you're getting married. White could also mean you're getting put in a box in the ground.
Right.
Or surrendering.
Yeah. Those types of things, like they get into very regionally specific, trying to speak a color language that speaks to a certain group of people, a demographic. And then the engineers, they have to manage this. They have to manage this so that, like, nowadays, like, you have Pantone. This was not trying to get something consistent. If you're manufacturing in Scotland and I'm manufacturing in Argentina, and it's like, no, like, John, I need it to be like this blue. Like, today you can use a Pantone and it'll get you most of the way there. Back in the day, it's like, I got to cut a little snip of this thing, put it in the thing, ship it over the ocean.
The same light.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is to try and deal with manufacturing and engineering so that all of our stop signs are the same red.
Yeah, exactly. And, well, quick question. Is there any names of theorists that you can throw out so our listeners may have a sense if they want to go pick up a book or something like that? Or
So, yeah, Chevroy is he's the heaviest.
Yeah.
My hats off to anyone who finishes the book. The copy I have, it has no illustrations. Good luck figuring out a book that has on color that has no illustrations. Josef Albers, Interaction of Color, it's a good book. It's a simple book. As a painter, he starts the book by saying, "Look, man, I mix paints for a living. It's a pain in the neck. So we're just going to use cuts of paper. Like we're more or less going to use construction paper to get you to start to understand how, when you look at chips, you say, like, that's the same in both pictures? Wow, like they look different." And I feel like the main thing he's trying to get across is that context matters. Change the context, change the color. I think that, like, those two are really good. Itten is another one. Itten. He has a color theory book that is it's fairly solid. But the thing is, they're all written for painters and maybe kind of like graphic designers. Right. There are some recent books on, like, the history of colors, the narrative language behind them, like where they come from. Like, they're all they're cute, they're nice, but they're useless if you're trying to figure out how to actually manage color.
And how do you take these theories and the things we're talking about now and applying them to your photography? Let's talk a little bit about that, and also kind of what we talked about before. How do you think about it when you're shooting a photo that you have constructed or you've set up everything, or one that you've just taken on the street? Do you think about it when you're shooting like that?
For sure.
Yeah. So talk about that a bit.
When I'm looking for color, the things that I get really excited about is when I can get subtle transitions. The crown box of stuff, like people say, like, I'm doing color work, like I'm looking for everything yellow. Like, wonderful. This I'm not into. It's nice to see things in more subtle light. I shoot mostly natural light. I've done commercial strobe work. I'm not particularly interested in it. But natural light has this wonderful ability for you to have you run the full spectrum so that you can have highlights that are so high that they start to cool off. They end up going back into a violet spectrum, the violet blue spectrum, which is fascinating. Then you have all your warms. And then as you transition into shadow, the moments when you can start to see a shadow start off warm and then shift into cool, this is amazing. Those subtle transitions are things that I look for. So I don't look for primary colors. Primary colors are clunky. It's a certain type of subtlety that I look for and a certain glaring intensity that I avoid when shooting.
Something I got it based on what you just said. You're talking about very subtle things, little gradations and little things that a lot of people may not even be looking for, but that's what you have your eyes for because that's what counts for you. Now, you see that on your screen because the screen shows zillions of colors more than we could ever process. And you've also acknowledged the fact that the end result is a print, and the print could never hold those. Where's your cutoff point? You see a lot of stuff going on when you're looking at your screen as far as gradations and details. And then you look at the final print, and a lot of that is just gone already. How does that sit with you? Are you okay with that? Do you shoot for that dropout or what?
It's amazing how much you can do with very little. You don't.
Well, look around us here. I mean,
you don't need every color in the spectrum to make a decent picture. So as values fall off, value shifts fall off, subtleties fall off in prints, there's another thing that's going to pick up is that natural light can pick them up in the way that they're framed. So I don't get like disheartened that it goes from being on the screen looking one way and then it's going to come out in real life looking another way as a print. An easy way to do it is like if you take an Apple screen, you dial down like the luminance in the screen, like 2 clicks, and then get up and go back like 20 feet. And then you can start to see like what that thing's going to read like at distance as a photograph.
That's interesting.
Because we interact with things on screens at a reasonable distance, usually because we're touching a screen or we're touching a keypad. But I mean, you can see a picture by Monet's Water Lilies. The Mad Enchantment is a fascinating book that was done by Ross King on Monet at the end of his life when he was doing the water lilies. The distance in which artists interact with their work is very close and very far, and the work has to read correctly from both distances. But there's a range in which you operate, and a lot of people deal with photography as if it's like they're going blind and they want it right up in their face to count like every nose hair of their portrait. And this is not a way to, it's not really a way to successfully, I think, take advantage of the range of your visual capacity to absorb things by always engaging it at exactly the same level. You want there to be some range and distance, and that there's going to be a dynamic to it so that when you live with art, when you go to museums as they're closing, you start to see these things are alive. They change. The day changes and they change around them.
One last question before we go for a break. You are very good in monochrome and color. Where do you feel more comfortable shooting?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It's it doesn't matter. You learn to draw first, which is in black and white, and then you learn to paint afterwards, which is in color.
All right, we're going to take a short break, come back with more with Adam, and we're going to be joined by Natasha Wilson. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
We are back, and we are going to be joined now by Natasha Wilson. She is the founder and vision behind the Anastasia Photo. Welcome to the show. We've been talking with Adam. He's got his whole vision down, and we're looking at yours, and it's a whole different palette. Where did you start getting your color sense from?
So I'm from Arizona originally. When I was graduating from high school, I didn't really want to go to college. I didn't want to invest all of this money. And to be honest, I wasn't, good at any other subject besides the creative aspects of things. And so I was just going to, basically my vision was to just like buy a van and just travel across the states. And my mom hated that idea. She was terrified for me.
Don't you just hate moms for that? Man, I tell you.
At the time I was like, come on. But now I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't be anywhere. Anyways.
By the way, you know what the trick of getting mom to agree? Say you'll take her along.
Oh, right. I love that.
Or just give her a worse alternative.
And so she was the one that actually suggested photography school to me. So I ended up going to a school in Massachusetts called the Hallmark Institute.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I went there. I loved it. It was the first time that I felt like I excelled in something. And when I was in high school and I was taking art classes, I wasn't particularly good. I just knew that I liked it. So a lot of times it was frustrating for me because I wanted to be able to paint or like create these things that came from my vision, and it just didn't execute well when I actually tried to do it on paper or canvas. So photography was a huge eye-opener for me because I felt like I could create exactly what I was envisioning in my head through photography. So color theory, that came pretty easy to me once I started doing photography because I wanted my photos to look like paintings. So I took every lesson that I learned with color theory with all of my art classes and just applied that to my photography.
So how do you make your photographs look like paintings?
When I see a lot of paintings that I like, they usually stick to, I want to say, around 2 to 3 colors. Like maybe they're monochromatic, or maybe they are only using, 2 complementary colors against each other. And so I applied that with my photos, where sometimes I would try to match like the clothing or the designs to the location. But if I couldn't get that, I would manipulate the colors in Photoshop to get that cohesive color palette.
So let me ask you, I was looking through a lot of your work, and you go in for a lot of very bold, flashing colors. Now, you said that some of your stuff you do in real time and some of it you do in post-production. Just as an example, you have some photographs. There was some models, and their hair is the same color as the clothing and the cars behind them and stuff like. How much would go into it afterwards?
Yeah, it depends per photo. Like if you're talking about the yellow shoot that I did with like the 3 girls that had yellow.
Yeah.
They actually all had yellow hair. I sought them out specifically. I was going through Instagram and I somehow was able to find 3 girls with neon yellow hair. When I met them in person, none of them had the same shade of yellow. One was like a neon highlighter yellow, one was like pastel yellow, and then one was like a faded, almost like a lime green yellow. That work I do in Photoshop to make everything look more on like just one.
So you make everything uniform in post.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you doing that yourself, or do you have a retoucher and a team? Or?
No, I do everything myself. I was doing it on my laptop, like on a trackpad for the last like 3 years, and I just got a tablet, so I'm moving up.
All right. And what about stylists? Do you work with a particular stylist to get the look that you want, or something different?
So I for styling and for creative direction, I do all of that myself. I really like to keep my team small, and I feel like when I have a vision, I am, super strong about it, and so I don't like to water down other people's visions or tell people no. So like a lot of times I'll just leave most of the work for myself. designers I do work with where I'll pull pieces, like if they have like different collections or gowns or whatever. I'll specifically pull things for shoots, but yeah, I'm doing all of the styling and direction myself.
I see. I noticed on Instagram a couple times you posted a photo, and then behind it you had the same photo with a whole other look. In this case, I'm looking at one that was red, and then there's blue.
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious why, and is that just to get some feedback from people?
That was actually just like mossy green area that I was in. And green is one of the easiest colors for me to change in Photoshop. And
Hmm.
so I actually seek out locations that have a lot of green so that I know that I can mix them later or do what I want with them later. As far as doing the one in pink and one in blue, I like to do like polls with my editing sometimes where in my stories I'll share a photo and then I'll be like, should this what should the color of
Hmm.
her hair be? And then I'll be like, what's the color of the background? And kind of let people like go back and forth and just give me feedback. A lot of times like I know exactly what I want to do, but I think it's really fun to get an
Sure.
viewer's perspective and kind of go off of that. And when I did the red and pink post, I would say like the majority of people said pink, but there was a lot of people that said blue too.
And are most of the people that are coming to you, the clients, they're looking for this kind of work? I mean, the colors that you're using.
Well, they're looking for definitely my like color editing style. I wouldn't
Hmm.
say that I do like that much manipulation with clients because a lot of times it's for brands, lookbooks, or stuff like that. Sometimes people want to be really unique and stand out, and then other times it's kind of like a little bit more basic still.
I just kind of want to ask also another question. Like when you were back, when you were at school and studying and kind of put some of these color ideas into practice, was it always with the sense that you would be working in fashion, or did you kind of go through different types of photography before you got there?
Well, before I got there, I would say that I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then when I was in photography school, I did everything. They taught us food photography and commercial work and fashion. I do remember hearing that, like, actually, I had a instructor that told me that I wouldn't make it in fashion because I was too kind, and most of the industry is a little bit more off-putting. But when I graduated, I was terrified, and I didn't do like I did like personal projects and stuff, but I didn't actually pursue photography for like 4 years after I graduated because I was so intimidated. I didn't know where to start, and I thought that either somebody had to find me and like kind of sign me with an agency or something, or you just had to know somebody in the business already. So it took me a while to realize that I could do it myself, and I could, yeah, be my own boss essentially.
But these bold colors were always kind of part of it for you.
Yes, I did have a kind of quirky color palette when I was in school. I think the one thing that sort of altered my editing path is when I was starting as a photographer and trying to get more into fashion. I remember hearing a client describe me once as like a very soft photographer, and they're like, "Oh yeah, she's like soft," and I didn't like that, and so immediately I was like, what can I do to change this? I don't want to be seen as soft. I want to be bold, and I want to be unique and that kind of thing. And so that's when I really started playing with color more.
Are there things you wouldn't shoot in color? And are there difficult colors for you? And difficult could be interpreted many ways.
I shoot pretty much everything in color. I kind of do stay away from black and white. Not that I don't like black and white. As far as staying away from any colors, it depends, because if I am doing a shoot that I know that I'm going to be doing color manipulation with, I'll seek out green for the most part. I don't want to get any other landscape that I can't change necessarily. But if it came to just finding different locations and stuff, I really seek out color palette. So there's not really a color that I wouldn't ever choose. It just depends on like the clothing and styling and all of that stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Adam, what about you? Things you wouldn't shoot in color, and what colors trouble you, if any?
The things that I wouldn't shoot in color usually have to deal with context. So if I'm photographing someone who is, say, a craftsman who's in a dedicated setting, so that I can't in order to see them work in their world, I can't pick up the background and move it. Sometimes, especially with people who manufacture things, you have a lot of machinery and products that have really intense industrial colors. And it looks like somebody's crown box threw up in the background, which is a great case for using black and white because you can deal with the values, but like the color, I'm going to spend hours doing all the manipulation to take out like bright yellow buckets and cans of acetone and things like that. So there are some contexts that I think work better for black and white, but I generally would like black and white as an aesthetic decision to have some sort of philosophical underpinning. There should be a good reason for it, not just like, I like the look. Like that, to me, it's a thin reason for doing something. So I think, whether you're doing a drawing or a photograph, that the selection of the medium should be tethered to the work that you're trying to make.
Gotcha. What about troublesome colors? Anything bother you?
Troublesome colors. Well, I think like Natasha said, the nice thing with green is it lands entirely outside of the spectrum of human flesh tone. So it allows you some flexibility to work without affecting the background. If you have something that is dominantly orange in the background, you got flesh tone things that you're
fighting you.
That you're kind of like dealing with. And I guess, as I mentioned before, depending on the environments that we work in, professional spheres, but also the aesthetic, whether you want to stand out or blend in is something. And I enjoy a subtlety to the work, so that a lot of times they'll comment on the sort of softness of it, which I think maybe to some extent, like Natasha, made me feel uncomfortable at first, but I started to settle into it and realize like that's actually that's kind of what I'm seeking out, and to just like slowly push into that a little further to see like there are so many things that are so jump in your face, and a good portion of that comes out of the newspaper tradition where you're printing on newsprint, so the work has to be contrasty. Photojournalism had to read in a single image, and it's like it's moving in a different direction where you almost have the luxury to deal with subtlety in a way.
Gotcha.
And Natasha, I wanted to ask you a bit about the process when a job comes to you. Is it usually a client will come with something that they want you to photograph, a dress, and the color is there already, and then you just go to work finding the location that you want to use with it? Or is there a conversation that happens before about, all right, today I want to work in yellows, or today I want to work in blues?
Yeah, there's a little bit of both. Sometimes I have clients that are like, we want like a dry grass field, and these are the like clothes that we're going to be using for it. So like that's specific. I can blend like like the colors from the clothing with the location that I choose. And then other times, like they do just have the clothing. They send me a photo of it, and they say, have creative reign, and I go out and find places based off of that clothing that will match the clothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question.
Yeah. Did you want to ask a question or jump in here at all?
Yeah, Natasha, I thought a question that I get frequently that I kind of wanted to put over to you, because I use the answer of fashion as an answer. So I'd like to hear it from your perspective, is that I find that a lot of photographers who are learning or kind of working their way up tend to say when they're dealing with their own colors, like, well, that's not really what it looked like. And what I'll say is that I have no interest in reality. Go look at fashion. Neither do they. And that actually makes it more interesting, because you're not beholden to this objective photojournalistic view of realism. I wonder, like, what would you say to people who feel kind of constrained of moving things beyond the boundaries of what reality holds?
That's a good question. I've definitely gotten people before that have seen some of my work and like, been like, oh, that's obviously fake or photoshopped or whatever. I don't, when I'm creating a color palette for my images, I'm not trying to make it realistic. I'm trying to make it visually appealing to the eye. And so I think that that's what's most important. And obviously, I want the viewer to enjoy it and kind of be immersed in this other world where those colors don't frequently exist. So yeah, I think that that's the first step, is to just break out of that mold of what is acceptable and what's not.
Mhm. And what do you feel about combining colors? I mean, I assume you've experimented a bunch and found that certain things you like and certain things you don't like, certain things work together and they don't. And do you go back to them, or you always try to experiment new and go from there?
Well, with color manipulation, when I'm doing, when I'm changing, like, say, leaves from green to another color, a lot of times, like, one of the easiest colors to change it to for some reason is red. So a lot of my work has red tones in it. And sometimes I love it, and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do something differently. And a lot of photos I play with for a while, where I'll go and change an entire color to like the blue, like you were talking about, or to
Mhm.
pink, and then see which one stands out to me more. Even though like I could change it to red in a second and it would be done. Sometimes I like the challenge of just seeing things differently. And sometimes if I get stuck, I'll pull out the old like RGB color wheel just so I can see color opposites and complementary colors. And I'll look at that and use that as a guide to help me decide what is actually going to look good in the photo.
And I guess this is kind of for both of you. Do you trust in the color wheels? I mean, do you trust when you see complementary colors as they're listed that way, or do you try to break from that?
Yeah, I think for me personally, a lot of times I just try what looks best to my eye at first. If I'm having problems and I'm like, why doesn't this look good right now? I will look at the color wheel and, see what suggestions I can make to where it's going to look good according to the wheel or whatever. And yeah, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I think just always playing with it and trusting your eye is the most important.
And in general, how much time do you spend? I mean, it sounds to me like there's a lot of time spent in front of the computer compared to the actual shoot. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it depends. A lot of times if I do a shoot, it's probably around like an hour, maybe two sometimes. And editing does take me longer. I probably spend around 30 to 45 minutes per image if I'm doing a lot of color manipulation. But for me, the Photoshop part is my favorite. Like, I love creating the image, but I love having the freedom to just play around in Photoshop.
And we'd asked Adam earlier about monitors. Do you have a monitor that you work with specifically? And have you gone through many to find the one you like?
Well, that's funny. I have been working on just my MacBook laptop for like the past 4 or 5 years, and so I don't really have anything else to go off of. I just started using like a extra monitor that my boyfriend had lying around, and it's just like the Mac like big one or whatever. But I'm like I know
That's the model number too. That's actually what they call it. If you look in a catalog.
And I do notice a difference from when I transfer that image from the screen to my laptop. The colors in the big screen are warmer and they pick up reds and yellows a lot more vibrantly. So it's hard because I'll be editing on there and then I'll bring it to my laptop and I'm like, this looks entirely different. So a lot of times when I am using that external screen, I just do skin retouching and cloning, healing, anything that I need to do, and then I actually do the filters and color alteration on my laptop.
Back to the laptop.
Because I think it's just better color.
I think a lot of people don't understand that every monitor has a different color, and you're working, getting everything perfect, and you put it onto another device. It looks totally different.
Yeah.
That's the importance of calibration and why it should be done on a regular basis. You have to be consistent.
And what about
that.
cameras? We didn't talk much with you, did we? I know you're like a shooter, but do you, Natasha? What cameras do you use, and have you noticed the different colors from the different cameras that you've tried, and what do you prefer?
So I only have one camera, again, crazy. I have a Canon 6D. It's super simple, but it gets the job done. For me personally, with shooting, I love Canon because that's just what I was introduced to when I was younger. So it just feels like second nature to me now. But for me, with coloring with Canon, it's not really an issue because I'm just going to do a bunch of crazy colors anyways in Photoshop. As far as like low lighting and stuff, it's not the greatest, but I just bump up the ISO really high.
By the way, you mentioned something about with color and the type of camera. Something that's important to talk about if we're talking about color theory and correct color and what's normal and what's exaggerated, and that is that cameras themselves have their own personalities, and every manufacturer has their own little formula for color. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Leica might be the only company that makes a very strong effort about not exaggerating any of the colors that are being recorded, but keeping it as straight and neutral as is possible. And that carries through even their point-and-shoots. A lot of the digital point-and-shoots that Leica sells are actually Panasonic cameras. And if you would compare the Panasonic and the Leica version side by side, and it's the same camera, the color out of the Leica is neutral, whereas the one out of the Panasonic is going to be pumped.
One of the things that gets missed when we're talking about technical products nowadays is that these things travel, right? If you take Leica and peel them back, right? They're a German company, right? Northern Europe is not notoriously colorful. It is a neutral-looking place.
Yeah.
It is kind of embedded in their art way before the camera came out. So when the camera did come about, and as they approach it with a sort of German sensibility, there is a scientific neutrality to it. I think that allows for a lot of flexibility. In order to stand out against neutral, colorful will stand out, and which is, I think, why a lot of the sort of Japanese camera companies, as they sort of came out, like I remember like Fuji sort of combating itself with Kodak. Like they had to have a different palette. It had to be something that wasn't the same. Because if they were the same, why would you buy it? Like it was just it may be something that was less expensive at the time. So I think that the color it's embedded into the culture in which is creating it. And if you understand that going in, you kind of get the tool that you're dealing with so that you can pick it up and, you can pick up, say, an American Stratocaster and get the sound that you want out of it, knowing what that thing is going to come with. But you play the instrument. The instrument shouldn't play you. And I think the same goes for photographers. They don't. They let the camera do a lot of the playing for them. And it's like, if I want a Natasha picture, I want a Natasha picture. I don't want a Natasha Canon picture. It should come from the point of origin should be the artist. It's their point of view that you're looking for, so that by you get to the end and they say like, wow, it's a great picture. You must have a great camera. It's like, go tell the chef he's got a great stove. Right. Keep in mind he's got a chef's knife next to him. But,
of course.
Those are very good points. That's a really good point. Really good point.
So Natasha, tell us, in your day-to-day life, how do you think about color? What catches your eye, and what do you hold in your memory bank to say, I'm going to use that later, and anything like that?
Well, I actually, when I'm driving, essentially, I'm always looking for new locations to shoot. And LA is great because it has a lot of color and there's a lot of unique buildings and stuff. Things that catch my eye right away are if I see like a car. I'm going to use an example that I saw a couple months ago and I can't get out of my head. There was a mustard yellow building, and then a mustard yellow Volkswagen bus, and then a mustard yellow Beetle, like VW Beetle next to it. And it was a car shop of some sort, and I'm assuming that the guy that owned it loved mustard yellow. Whenever I find a location that I love, I actually just send myself the location from my iPhone, and I take a photo of it. And then my text messages to myself are all just photos of locations that I found, and then the location. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing that one in a fashion shoot pretty soon.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how in different cultures, colors have different meanings, and we also talked a bit about this idea of theory, which often just the word alone scares people off. But would either of you, what do you guys think about just this idea that there is something instinctual, something that some person understands and another person might not? And of course, there's also the physiology of eyes, and everyone has different versions of color. But do you think a lot of these ideas that what looks good in terms of color or what colors go well together is just something that is almost instinctual?
I do think that a lot of people that have, creativity flowing through their blood can pick it up pretty easily. But I don't think that it's impossible to understand when you're looking at a color wheel or when you're looking at photos that you like, even just through Instagram and collecting saved photos and seeing why you like them and why a color palette is a certain way. I think that we all understand why we like something and if we want to, create something like that.
Okay. Anybody?
Yeah, I think that color is color and its sensibility start to get interesting when people move past cliches. And I think that a lot of examples that you hear people say like, oh, so-and-so's got like a really good eye, or they're just like naturally good with color. And I found a very close parallel exists in the world of high-end cooking and also in music. Because if you try and tell anybody who's 60 years into music production that someone's just like they're just
genius.
natural.
They're great, right.
They're usually, there's something there that's natural, but there's also some stuff, there are some really, really rough edges. There's a lot of clunkiness that exists in it. And the same thing happens with food. Some people have an extraordinary palate. Their ability to discern flavors or to combine flavors with no training at all is like, it's almost like an anomaly. And I think these things happen. But the question for me that really resides with a lot of people learning this is, well, if you are an anomaly, great. Odds are no one's going to know how you got there. You might not even know how you got there. But if you're not an anomaly and you're interested in it, do you have to give up because you're not some selected genius? And I think that answer is no. There are ways to be able to move through it, and don't kill yourself if you don't feel like a genius out of the box, because at least most of the biographical genius stories that I've read up on, there were many, many nights crying and kicking on the floor. Yeah. So that, even if one capacity is really working, to get it out of you still has a bunch of other things that need some assistance.
Yeah. Okay. It's funny. I came into this show with a little bit of apprehension because it's so hard. We're talking about something that's kind of hard.
You said you were nervous.
Me? It's hard to sort of verbalize and pin down a lot of these things. I find a lot of it's a little bit too ethereal for me, but I think we did pretty well here. Adam, if folks would like to catch up with your work, where should they go?
They can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is my name, Adam Marelli, Marelli. If you'd like to join me and shoot some color side by side, amworkshops.com. You can come on a photography adventure with me somewhere around the world.
AM Workshops.
amworkshops.com. Yep.
And you also have some really, really neat camera bags coming out.
Yeah, we got some other products coming out. We got a new camera bag line that's launching. It's going to be available like a China for those of you in Asia, like a Miami in the United States. And for those of you in the New York area, I will have a small quantity that you can get from me. So you can reach out to me on the website or direct message me on Instagram, whatever you want, and we'll get you sorted.
Natasha, if folks would like to catch up with your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well. It's Deanastasia, DeAnastacia. And my portfolio or my website is deanastasiaphoto.com.
Okay, that's terrific. Hey, do you like free stuff? So do we, and that's why subscribing to our podcast is absolutely free. All you have to do is head on over to Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, Player FM, SoundCloud, or YouTube and sign up for instant access to all of our shows. And don't forget, if you have questions, we might just have the answers. Drop us a line if you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions for upcoming shows. Remember, if you listen to the show, you're part of the show, so drop us a line and help us take it to where it hasn't been before. For now, on behalf of Adam, Natasha, John, Jason, and myself, thank you so much for tuning in today.